Put the chain down, Brenda. 40 kids haven't eaten since lunch.
You break that seal, and I call the police.
Call them after we feed the kids.
Both of you need to stop. This storage room was sealed for estate inventory. No one opens it until the auditor arrives.
The auditor isn't sleeping in the gym tonight.
We don't know that anyone is sleeping here.
The buses stopped running an hour ago. Route 16 is closed. County Road 9 is under ice and half the parents can't get through.
The district emergency office is coordinating transportation.
The district emergency office sent an email during a blackout.
A boy stumbled through the gym doors with one hand over his mouth. He reached a trash can and vomited before a teacher could catch him. Micah Hale followed, carrying a paper cup of water. He took his medication after lunch, Micah said. He says he gets sick if he doesn't eat. Brenda pointed towards the faculty lounge. There are crackers and vending machine snacks. I checked them, Evan said. The crackers contain milk. 2 granola bars carry sesame warnings and the trail mix has peanuts. Most students can eat them. Most isn't a safety plan. Brenda's expression tightened. You are a cafeteria utility worker, not the district dietitian. And there are 40 children waiting? Micah looked at the chain, then at the metal bar in his father's hands. Dad, can they arrest you for this? Maybe. Then why are you doing it? Evan looked through the doors toward the children sitting in the dark. Because tonight there are 40 questions more important than that one. Brenda pulled a second padlock through the chain. I know exactly what is missing from this pantry, and I will not allow you to destroy the remaining chain of custody. Evan stopped. What did you say? I said the pantry is under inventory control. No. You said you know exactly what is missing. For the first time, Brenda's hand hesitated on the lock. That hesitation lasted less than a second, but Evan saw it. 3 hours earlier, Jefferson Ridge Middle School had still looked ordinary. The cafeteria smelled of disinfectant, canned tomatoes, and baked bread. Students complained about homework, traded desserts, and abandoned half-eaten food on plastic trays. The dish machine rattled through its final lunch cycle while Evan checked a produce delivery against a handwritten receiving sheet. No one at the school knew much about him beyond the facts printed on his personnel file. He was 43, widowed, raising a 14-year-old son, and employed as a cafeteria utility worker. His listed duties included receiving deliveries, washing trays, moving cases, cleaning equipment, checking storage temperatures, and filling whatever gap appeared when someone called out. That description was accurate. It was also incomplete. Years earlier, Evan had supervised food operations at emergency shelters where a single mislabeled carton could reach hundreds of people before anyone understood what had happened. He had organized meal lines during floods, winter storms, wildfires, and mandatory evacuations. He knew how to feed large groups without power, how to separate allergy zones using nothing more than tables and tape, and how to reconstruct an entire distribution from lot codes after the computers failed. He no longer used that title. He still carried the black marker. That morning, Brenda Sloan arrived before the first lunch period with 2 district employees and a stack of printed inventory sheets. Brenda had directed Jefferson Ridge's nutrition program for 11 years. She understood federal reimbursement categories, procurement schedules, storage rules, and the exact language administrators used when they wanted to make a budget problem sound temporary. She spent nearly 2 hours counting the emergency pantry. At 11:20, she ordered the door sealed. The pantry held shelf-stable meals, bottled water, allergy-controlled kits, milk cartons, fruit cups, crackers, tuna pouches, sunflower seed spread, and supplies reserved for transportation delays or extended utility failures. A red numbered strip was fixed across the handles. A chain and padlock were added afterward. Brenda told the staff that the state child nutrition program would begin an audit the following morning. Preliminary numbers did not match the electronic records, so nothing could enter or leave the room until the discrepancy was documented. The explanation was plausible. Federal food programs required careful inventory control. Once a discrepancy became part of an audit, opening the room could blur the point at which products disappeared. Most employees accepted the instruction without question. Evan noticed 2 details. Brenda refused to say how large the shortage was. She also photographed several empty shelf spaces before applying the seal. He asked whether there was a receiving error. Brenda told him to return to the dish room. Evan did. At 3:37 that afternoon, a transformer exploded 2 blocks from the school. The cafeteria lights vanished. The ventilation fans wound down. The electronic registers went black. Somewhere in the building, a fire door released with a heavy metallic clap. Emergency lighting came on in the main corridors, but classrooms and the gym remained dim. Outside, freezing rain had been falling for more than an hour. Ice-coated power lines, sidewalks, tree limbs, and road signs. The first buses left before the district suspended transportation. The others never moved. By 4:15, 40 students remained inside Jefferson Ridge. 22 belonged to the after-school academic program. 11 were waiting for rural bus routes. 7 had been at band rehearsal. 6 adults stayed with them: Laura, 3 teachers, a custodian, and Evan. Brenda was still at the school because the inventory papers were locked in her office. At first, everyone assumed the delay would last less than an hour. The district sent a message saying alternate transportation was being coordinated. Parents were warned not to attempt unsafe travel. 1 hour became 2. The building cooled steadily. Phone batteries drained. Students grew restless, then anxious, then hungry. Several had eaten lunch before noon. One boy had taken medication that made him nauseated on an empty stomach. 2 students had migraine plans warning that missed meals could trigger severe symptoms. Sophie Carver had a metabolic disorder requiring food at regular intervals. Her condition did not make her instantly critical, but the nurse's written plan was clear. If transportation delays interfered with dinner, staff should provide a measured carbohydrate snack and monitor her. Laura suggested using food from the faculty lounge and vending machines. Evan checked every available product. The supply was too small for 40 students, and the allergy risks were obvious. Some crackers contained milk, several cereal bars carried sesame warnings, trail mix contained peanuts. A box of bakery cookies had no individual ingredient labels. The emergency pantry had been stocked for exactly this kind of disruption. Brenda refused to open it. She argued that the electronic allergy system was unavailable, the inventory was under seal, and using food during a blackout would destroy the audit trail. She warned that the district could face penalties if federally funded products were distributed without documentation. Some of what she said was true. Evan offered a controlled alternative. The nurse kept paper allergy plans in a mechanical filing cabinet. The cafeteria had paper bags, gloves, manual count sheets, and permanent markers. 2 adults could verify each product. Lot codes could be recorded by hand. Wrappers could be retained. Nothing needed to be cooked or refrigerated. Brenda rejected the proposal. She said the school had to wait for district authorization. The district office did not answer. By the time Sophie began shaking, the argument had moved to the pantry door. Now Brenda stood with the chain wrapped around her wrist, and Evan held the steel tray release bar beneath the lock. Laura looked from one to the other. Brenda, is there enough safe food inside for 40 students? That is not the issue. It is the issue for the children in that gym. The pantry is evidence. Evidence of what? Evan asked. Brenda lifted her phone and began recording again. I'm documenting that you have been ordered not to enter. Document the alternatives too. What alternatives? The district did not respond. Transportation has no estimated arrival. The vending food is not safe for several students. The paper allergy records are available. 2 adults can witness every item. Brenda's gaze moved toward Laura. You should think carefully before you support this. Laura understood the warning. Brenda controlled nutrition staffing across the district. She could describe Laura's decision as an unauthorized use of federal inventory. The superintendent could argue that opening the pantry exposed the district to liability. Laura also heard Sophie crying in the gym. Record that I support emergency food service, she said. That does not authorize breaking an audit seal. No, Laura replied. It records why he did it. Evan applied pressure to the steel bar. The auxiliary padlock snapped. Brenda shouted his name as the chain fell loose and the red seal tore across the middle. The battery-powered hallway camera captured everything. Evan knew exactly how the footage would look later. A cafeteria worker forcing entry into a sealed federal food storage room after the district director ordered him to stop. He opened the doors anyway. Laura's flashlight crossed the first row of shelves. Several sections were full. Others were not. Evan expected 6 cases of shelf-stable milk on the lower right rack. Only 2 remained. The section labeled Weekend Nutrition Kits held 3 cartons instead of 12. Rectangles of clean metal showed where large cases had recently been removed. The empty spaces did not look as though they had been created by 40 children eating dinner. They looked older. Brenda stepped into the doorway. No one touches anything. Evan scanned the shelves again. What happened to the rest? You just broke the seal. That question belongs to you now. The statement was calm, almost administrative, but the intention beneath it was clear. By opening the room, Evan had created a new dividing line. Anything missing after that moment could be attached to him. He did not argue. The children still needed food. Laura returned with the nurse's paper allergy folder. Evan placed it on a dry prep table and built 3 controlled work areas. The first handled standard meals. The second handled dairy and egg-free meals. The third was reserved for strict allergy plans. He assigned Laura to read names and restrictions. Mrs. Talbot verified each completed bag. The custodian, Mr. Foley, recorded case counts. Micah and 2 older students carried only sealed, finished bags to the gym. No student entered the pantry. No child selected food from open cartons. Evan wrote a number on every bag, followed by the student's name, dietary restriction, product lot codes, and preparation time. He started with Sophie. Her medical plan called for a measured carbohydrate portion, so her bag contained crackers, applesauce, fruit, and water. Laura delivered it and returned several minutes later to report that the girl's shaking had begun to ease. After that, the process settled into a controlled rhythm. Evan did not hurry merely because Brenda filmed him. Speed could create errors, and errors involving allergies could not be retrieved once a bag left the room. He rejected 2 fruit cups with dented lids. He moved 1 student to the dairy-free group after Laura found an updated parent email. He required clean gloves before every strict allergy bag. He separated wrappers by table and labeled each collection sack. Brenda remained near the door, documenting every opened case but contributing nothing to the distribution. At bag 14, Evan opened an outer carton labeled Sesame Free. A warm, nutty odor reached him before he touched the inner packages. His hand stopped. For a moment, the cafeteria disappeared. He remembered another room, another emergency line, another outer carton that promised one thing while the product inside carried something else. "Stop the line," he said. Mr. Foley was already reaching toward the case. Evan caught his wrist before the custodian touched a wrapper. "What is it?" Laura asked. "The exterior carton is wrong. The individually wrapped bars inside came from a different manufacturer. Their labels contained a sesame warning." Brenda stepped closer. "The outside says safe. The inside says it isn't. It could be mixed packaging from the distributor. That is still mislabeled product. We can keep it away from the 1 student with sesame sensitivity. Crumbs move, gloves move, cardboard dust moves." Evan placed the whole carton in a clean plastic liner and wrote, "Do not serve," across it. His hand trembled while he copied the visible lot code. Micah saw it. "Dad, wash your hands." "I didn't touch it." "Wash them anyway." Micah obeyed. Brenda looked at the code and said almost casually, "That is not one of the missing 91K cases." Evan stopped writing. Laura looked up. "What is 91K?" Brenda's face tightened. "A product series." "No one asked about that series," Evan said. "You asked what was missing. I asked why this carton was mislabeled." Brenda raised her phone. "I am not discussing an active inventory discrepancy with the employee who compromised the room." Evan wrote her statement in the margin of his log, including the time. Brenda noticed. You think writing something makes it true?" "No," he said. "Writing it means someone can check." The line resumed. At bag 19, a teacher discovered that 1 student's dairy restriction was absent from the paper file, but included in a parent email. Evan documented the source and changed the meal. At bag 27, he found 2 fruit cups with damaged seams and removed them. At bag 34, Micah tried to carry 4 completed meals at once. Evan limited him to 2. Micah protested that he could handle 4. Evan told him the goal was not to prove strength, but to deliver the correct bag to the correct child. At bag 40, Evan wrote Micah's name. The boy looked inside. "You gave me water. You had milk at lunch." "That is not why." They were short on shelf-stable milk, and Evan had saved the remaining cartons for students who needed the additional calories. Micah understood. He also noticed Evan had not prepared a bag for himself. "You should eat. There will be time. You always say that." Evan capped the marker. "Tonight, later is still available." The final meal reached the gym at 6:11 p.m. 40 names, 40 numbered bags, 40 matching entries in the handwritten record. Laura and Mrs. Talbot signed the final count. The gym became quieter once the children began eating. The freezing rain still struck the roof, but the sound carried less fear. Students huddled beneath blankets, compared fruit cups, and joked about which teacher would snore loudest if they had to sleep at school. No one suffered an allergic reaction. No one received the wrong meal. The crisis seemed to be easing. Then Mr. Foley found water spreading beneath the pantry shelves. A supply line behind the wall had cracked in the cold. The leak threatened 2 unopened cases stored near the floor. Grace Community Church stood across the road and had a generator, dry storage, and a secure loading entrance. Laura directed Evan to move the cases there. Brenda objected. She said no federal inventory could leave school property during an active discrepancy review. Laura wrote the order in a notebook, recorded the time and case numbers, and signed it. "Is ink official enough?" she asked. Evan copied the numbers into his own log. The 2 cases were loaded into his pickup. The hallway camera recorded him pushing the cart through the rear exit and placing the food in his truck. Its angle did not show Laura following several feet behind him because a concrete support blocked the view. Pastor Grant Ellis met Evan at the church loading entrance. The pastor signed a receipt confirming that both cases remained sealed and would not be distributed. When Evan returned to school, Brenda was standing near the rear window with her phone raised. She had photographed his license plate. Power returned shortly before midnight. Most students had already been collected by parents using sheriff-guided routes, though 6 remained until after 1 in the morning. Evan stayed until Micah was the last student left. The boy watched Brenda walk through the pantry with a flashlight, photographing shelves and checking printed lists. Even at 14, Micah understood she was no longer preserving evidence. She was arranging it. The inventory team arrived at 7 the next morning. Brenda was already there. Evan had slept less than 3 hours when Laura called him back to school. By the time he entered the cafeteria, Brenda had spread printed inventory sheets across 3 tables. Owen Price, an auditor from the Ohio Child Nutrition Program, stood beside her. He was 58, deliberate, and visibly uninterested in anyone's preferred version of events. His glasses sat low on his nose while he compared delivery records with case counts. Detective Carla Boone stood near the broken pantry seal. Brenda pointed toward Evan. That is the employee who forced entry. Carla showed him her badge and instructed him not to enter the pantry. Evan stayed outside. Owen asked how many cases he had removed. Evan explained that 2 unopened cases were transferred to the church because of the leak. He had opened only the products required for 40 meals, and every item was recorded. Brenda placed a printed summary on the table. The pantry was allegedly missing 12 emergency meal cases, 8 cases of shelf-stable milk, 6 allergen-controlled kits, and miscellaneous products worth more than $6,000. The amount was far beyond anything Evan had used. "That did not happen last night," he said. Brenda's answer was immediate. "The room was sealed before you entered. The shelves were already empty. You broke the only control protecting the inventory. I asked where the missing food went before I touched a case. You also removed products in your personal vehicle. 2 cases. The camera shows multiple trips to the truck. 1 trip with food, 1 trip to retrieve blankets and a charger." Carla took notes without reacting. She asked whether Evan would consent to searches of his truck, house, garage, and storage shed. He agreed. The search began that afternoon. Nothing from the school was found. Micah stood on the porch while deputies carried boxes of old receipts and work papers from the garage. Neighbors watched from windows. A man across the street photographed the search with his phone. The absence of food weakened the allegation but did not eliminate it. The district argued Evan could have transferred the missing products elsewhere. Carla inspected Grace Community Church. The 2 cases remained sealed, dry, and stacked exactly where Evan had left them. Pastor Ellis produced the handwritten receipt. Laura's instruction appeared at the top. That accounted for 2 cases. It did not account for the larger shortage. The electronic access log created another problem. A credential associated with Evan's name had opened the pantry 11 times during the previous month. The record appeared damaging until Carla learned that that Jefferson Ridge used a shared receiving group credential on delivery days. Evan's physical access card was often left in the receiving office so kitchen supervisors could unlock storage during unloading. Evan had complained about the arrangement more than once. Brenda had never corrected it. When Carla asked why, Brenda said staffing levels made strict card control impractical. The answer shifted responsibility back toward the system without identifying who had used the card. The school suspended Evan without pay. Local television aired the hallway footage. The segment showed him breaking the seal, pushing a food cart, loading his truck, and driving away. It did not show Sophie shaking. It did not show 40 labeled bags. It did not show Laura's written order or the church receipt. The headline described a cafeteria employee investigated after federal food disappeared during a blackout. A rumor spread that Evan had fed the children only to create a reason for entering the pantry. At school, someone taped a sign to Micah's locker. "Free lunch at Micah's house." He tore it down before a teacher saw it. By lunchtime, 2 students had asked whether his father kept stolen food in their garage. Micah answered neither question. That evening, he told Evan nothing had happened at school. The lie was small and protective, the kind children use when they see a parent already carrying too much. Evan knew he was hiding something but did not press him. The financial pressure arrived faster than the formal charges. Without his paycheck, Evan calculated how long the rent account would last. 3 weeks if he paid only essentials, 5 if he delayed the truck repair and asked the utility company for an extension. The school district's insurance covered Micah, but suspension placed that coverage under review at the end of the month. He spent one morning applying for warehouse shifts. 2 employers called back until they searched his name and found the news footage. One hiring manager told him the company could not risk placing someone under a theft investigation near inventory. Evan thanked him for the honesty. After the call, he sat at the kitchen table with Rachel's old calculator and rebuilt the budget for the 4th time. Micah came home carrying a folded permission slip for a band trip. He kept it in his backpack because he had already seen the cost. Evan found it while searching for a medical form. "Why didn't you show me this?" "I don't need to go." "What? You have been practicing for it since September. It costs $200. "That is my problem." "No. It became ours when they stopped paying you." Evan wanted to correct him, but the boy was right. A single parent's problems always leaked into the child's life, no matter how carefully the adult sealed them. He signed the permission slip anyway. Micah watched him. "What? We don't have the money. The deadline is next week." "That is not money." "No, it is time." The answer sounded like hope, but Evan knew it was only postponement. Owen Price focused less on the video and more on the handwritten records. The 40-meal log was unusually complete. It separated lot numbers by allergy table, identified witnesses, preserved wrappers, and accounted for every bag without unexplained gaps. The notation beside the mislabeled sesame carton caught Owen's attention. RLC, relabeling conflict. It was a shorthand used in emergency shelter distribution systems, not ordinary school food service. Owen asked Evan where he had learned it. Evan said he had worked in disaster food operations. The answer was technically sufficient. Owen continued. He had reviewed thousands of school meal records. Evan's handwriting was not the work of a cafeteria employee improvising in the dark. It was command tracking, designed to reconstruct who received what after systems failed. The auditor eventually recognized Evan's name from an old state report. 10 years earlier, Evan had supervised nutrition operations at a wildfire evacuation center in Ridge County. Thousands of people had been displaced. Shelters operated in schools, churches, and civic buildings. Deliveries arrived from multiple vendors, often with incomplete manifests. During the 3rd day, Evan opened an outer case labeled as vegetable soup with no sesame ingredients. The odor was wrong. He isolated the product, stopped service in his section, and radioed a warning to the other feeding stations. A regional coordinator ordered the remaining lines to continue until the vendor confirmed the ingredients. Hundreds of evacuees had already waited hours, and the coordinator feared panic and shortages. One section used the soup. Rachel Hale was volunteering there. She had spent the morning guiding children through the line, carrying trays for elderly evacuees and cleaning tables. She ate a small serving after skipping breakfast. Within minutes, her throat tightened. The shelter had epinephrine, but the emergency kit was being used in another building. A replacement arrived too late. Rachel died before Evan reached the hospital. The official investigation determined that the product had been placed inside the wrong outer carton. The distributor was cited. The regional organization changed its labeling procedures. Evan was not formally blamed for Rachel's death. Public reporting still placed his name close enough to the failure that readers assumed responsibility. One article emphasized that he had halted service in his section, causing delays, without explaining that his decision prevented others from receiving the mislabeled product. Evan remained in disaster work for 11 months. Then he left. He accepted warehouse shifts, school maintenance jobs, and eventually cafeteria work. The title was smaller. The responsibility felt containable. The black marker remained in his pocket. Micah found the old article before Evan chose to explain any of it. The boy had always known Rachel died from an allergic reaction while volunteering at a shelter. He had not known his father had been running part of the food operation. The article showed Rachel in a yellow volunteer vest smiling beside a line of children. Micah placed the tablet on the kitchen table. "You were in charge." "I was responsible for one section." "Mom died where you worked." "Yes. You never told me." "I told you how she died." "You left out where you were." Evan looked at Rachel's photograph. He had spent years deciding which details a child could carry. Each year, Micah became old enough for more truth, and each year, Evan found another reason to wait. He explained that he had stopped the product in his own section. He had radioed warnings. He had asked the coordinator to suspend all lines until the ingredients were confirmed. The other section continued. Micah asked why Evan had not gone there himself. The answer was more complicated than cowardice and less comforting than innocence. 200 people were waiting in Evan's section. Infants needed formula. Elderly evacuees required low-sodium meals. A replacement shipment had just arrived without sorting documents. Leaving would have shut down the only controlled distribution point in that part of the shelter. Professionally, staying was defensible. As a husband, Evan had never forgiven himself. Micah asked whether his father believed Rachel's death was his fault. Evan said he believed he had recognized danger and still failed to reach the person he loved before it did. "That is not the same thing," Micah said. "It feels the same at 3 in the morning." Micah looked at the black marker on the table. "Did you feed those kids because it was right, or because you are still trying to go back to that night?" "Both." Micah nodded slowly. At least that answer is real. The district's legal offer arrived 3 days later. Evan would admit to unauthorized use of federal program property and negligent control of inventory during the blackout. In return, the district would recommend reduced charges, limited restitution, and no felony prosecution. His employment would end, but the agreement might protect him from jail and preserve enough stability to continue raising Micah. The district attorney who presented the document never threatened custody directly. He did not need to. Evan understood what a felony could mean for future employment, housing applications, insurance, and the 1,000 ordinary judgments that shape whether a single parent appears stable. The signature line waited at the bottom of the last page. Evan nearly signed. He did not believe the statement was true. He also knew trials did not always reward truth. Video carried emotional power. The inventory gap was real. His access credential appeared repeatedly in the logs. Brenda could describe him as a former disaster supervisor still traumatized by his wife's death and acting recklessly during the blackout. The agreement offered certainty. Micah opened the conference room door before the pen touched paper. The district attorney told him to wait outside. Micah remained in the doorway. If you sign, they'll say their numbers are true. The numbers do not change because I sign. People stop looking for who changed them. Evan looked down at the document. That was the purpose of the agreement. It did not merely punish him. It ended the investigation at the exact point where Brenda needed it to end. Micah's voice shook, but he continued. You told me records matter because someone should be able to check what happened. Let them check. Evan worried that continuing the fight might cost his son more than surrendering. Micah understood. I already lost Mom, he said. I don't want to lose the truth because you're afraid of losing me. Evan set down the pen. He refused the agreement. Owen Price began reconstructing the 40 meals independently. Parents had kept many of the paper bags because Evan had written names and allergy instructions across the fronts. Some brought the originals to the board office. Others sent photographs. Within 2 days, Owen had verified all 40 numbers. They ran consecutively from 1 through 40. The product codes matched Evan's handwritten log. The quantities matched the opened cartons and retained wrappers. There was no unexplained gap large enough to account for the missing cases. Most importantly, none of the bags contained products from Lot Series 91K. Brenda's missing inventory report centered on 26 cases from that series. Owen requested delivery and transferred data from the distributor's independent platform. Those records were outside district control. They showed the 91K cases arriving 3 weeks before the blackout. Several were scanned out of Jefferson Ridge inventory 9, 12, and 17 days before Evan broke the pantry seal. The transfer approvals came from a management-level account. Brenda described the scans as synchronization errors. Owen checked the shipment weights. The cases had physically left the delivery chain. Carla Boone followed the destination records to Sloan Family Events, a catering company owned by Brenda's brother. The company operated from a converted warehouse near the county fairgrounds. It specialized in corporate lunches, retirement parties, church banquets, and low-cost boxed meals. Carla obtained invoices showing that the business had purchased miscellaneous surplus food from the district. The descriptions were vague, and the prices were far below the original cost. No public surplus auction had occurred. A search warrant allowed investigators to inspect the warehouse. Most school labels had been removed from the products still in storage, but adhesive residue and partial markings remained. Several unopened 91K cases were stacked behind catering supplies. The company owner insisted Brenda had told him the food was excess inventory approved for disposal. He produced text messages. In the earliest messages, Brenda discussed food nearing expiration and families who needed weekend meals. Later messages referred to moving the clean cases before count day and balancing names on the back end. One message sent 2 weeks before the blackout read, "Take all 91K, I can cover them under winter support." The investigation widened. Owen compared federal reimbursement claims with attendance records. Hundreds of meals had been billed under the names of students who were absent, transferred, or out of school during holidays. Some entries described breakfasts and lunches supposedly served while the building was closed. These were ghost meals. The records used real children's names to create meals no child had received. When questioned, Brenda described them as continuity adjustments intended to preserve funding for weekend nutrition support. Her explanation contained part of the truth. Years earlier, she had watched sealed surplus food destroyed while families asked the district for weekend help. She began transferring unused products to a community pantry without formal approval. At first, the food truly went to hungry children. Then she altered inventory counts to hide the transfers. When the district threatened to reduce funding, she recorded meals that had never been served to maintain reimbursement levels. Later, newly purchased products left the district instead of surplus stock. Some still reached community programs. Some went to her brother's catering business at a fraction of their value. Each new step was justified by the previous one. Brenda told herself the program would collapse if the real numbers appeared. She believed rules written in offices had no moral authority over children who were hungry on weekends. Over time, the children became the reason she used to protect every lie, even the lies that no longer helped them. Carla interviewed Laura again. The vice principal had already admitted writing the transfer order, but she remained hesitant about what Brenda had said afterward. Carla placed the church receipt beside the initial statement. The two documents did not contradict each other completely. Laura had said she authorized moving the cases to dry storage. She had avoided saying she specifically approved the church. The difference had allowed Brenda to imply Evan chose the destination himself. Laura stared at the papers for a long time. She had worked in the district for 19 years. Her pension, health coverage, and chance of becoming principal all depended on administrators who had already signaled that Brenda's account was preferred. She also remembered Evan standing beside the pantry door while Sophie shook in the gym. Brenda told me that if I confirmed the church transfer, the district would say I removed federal inventory without authority, Laura said. Did that influence your first statement? Carla asked. Yes. Did Evan act on your direction? Yes. Did you see him take any other food? No. Laura's revised statement removed the final ambiguity around the two cases. It also made clear that Brenda had pressured a witness before the investigation began. The audit also exposed a quieter harm that did not fit easily into a television headline. Several parents received automated notices stating that their children had exceeded meal account limits or had been served duplicate federally reimbursed meals. One mother, Denise Mercer, arrived at the district office carrying attendance records for her daughter, who had been hospitalized on 3 of the dates listed. Another family found weekend meals billed under the name of a child who had moved to another county 6 months earlier. The families were not accused directly, but the notices made them feel as though they had participated in something dishonest. Some feared losing eligibility for other assistance. Others worried that the district would report them for providing false information. Owen held a separate meeting in the library and explained that the families were witnesses to the falsification, not suspects. He asked them to bring calendars, medical records, custody schedules, and any proof showing where their children had been on the dates in question. The request embarrassed people who had already been forced to document poverty repeatedly. Evan attended only because several parents asked him to explain why the records mattered. He stood beside a whiteboard and showed how a false meal did more than increase one number. It created an imaginary child in a cafeteria seat, an imaginary carton removed from inventory, and an imaginary justification for the next order. Enough imaginary meals could conceal entire cases moving through the wrong door. Denise asked why Brenda would use real names instead of invented ones. Evan explained that real students already existed in the reimbursement system. Their eligibility codes made the claims look ordinary, and ordinary claims attracted less attention than fictional accounts. The answer made the room angrier because it revealed how vulnerability had been converted into camouflage. The families most dependent on the meal program had been selected precisely because officials assumed they would have the least power to challenge the records. Micah sat in the back of the library and watched his father answer questions without taking control of the room. Evan did not call Brenda evil. He did not pretend every unauthorized food transfer had harmed someone. He separated what could be proven from what he suspected, correcting parents when their anger pushed beyond the evidence. On the drive home, Micah asked why Evan had defended Brenda's original pantry deliveries. Because some children did receive food, Evan said. She still blamed you. That does not make every fact about her false. Micah stared through the windshield at the dark road. It would be easier if bad people were wrong about everything. That is why easy stories are dangerous. The district attempted one final administrative solution before the public meeting. The superintendent proposed separating the Blackout incident from the broader audit. Evan would be publicly cleared of stealing the 40 meals, while the missing inventory would remain under confidential review. The offer sounded reasonable until Owen explained that the separation would preserve Brenda's central claim, that the pantry shortage began after Evan broke the seal. Without the earlier transfer data becoming public, the district could restore Evan's job while leaving his name permanently connected to an unexplained loss. Evan rejected that version of exoneration. He did not need the district to call him brave. He needed it to stop describing the truth as unresolved after the evidence had resolved it. Brenda, meanwhile, continued working from home under temporary administrative leave. She sent board members long explanations about federal waste rules, food insecurity, and the district's history of rejecting her proposals. Some of those documents were accurate. They showed repeated attempts to create a legal weekend program and repeated denials based on cost. They also showed the moment her language changed. Early emails asked for permission. Later emails reported completed meals that had never occurred. By the final year, she no longer requested authority because she had built a system in which her own records created it. That progression mattered to Evan. It prevented the case from becoming a simple tale about one greedy director. Brenda had crossed the first line because the official system failed hungry children. She crossed every line after that because the first violation appeared to work. The public meeting would have to hold both truths at once. The public parent meeting took place 9 days after the blackout. The Jefferson Ridge gym was filled beyond capacity. Folding chairs covered the floor where the 40 students had eaten during the storm. Parents stood along the walls and beneath the basketball hoops. Local cameras occupied the rear platform, though no one could agree whether the meeting was about child safety, theft, district corruption, or all three. Some parents wore stickers reading, "Feeding kids is not theft." Others demanded to know why an employee had been allowed to break into sealed federal storage. Evan sat at one side of the stage. Brenda sat at the other. Micah and the students from the blackout occupied the front rows. Those who still had the original bags held them in their laps. The others carried printed photographs verified by their parents. The superintendent opened the meeting by describing the situation as an unresolved inventory and procedural matter. The phrase angered nearly everyone because it reduced 40 children, a criminal accusation, and months of missing food to a neutral administrative problem. Owen Price presented the emergency meal reconstruction. 40 numbered bags, 40 names, 40 documented combinations of products. The wrappers, witness signatures, and case counts supported Evan's record. The entire distribution could be reconstructed without relying on the district's electronic system. Owen showed that the amounts removed for the meals matched the remaining open cases. He showed the isolated sesame carton and the photographs of its conflicting labels. He explained that Evan had created a more reliable manual trace during the blackout than the district maintained during normal operations. Brenda listened until Owen finished. Then she argued that the meal record did not explain the 26 missing cases from Lot Series 91K. The room became quiet before most people understood why. Owen asked how she knew the exact number and lot series. Brenda replied that the information appeared in the inventory report. It did not. The public report did not identify 91K. The summary provided to the school board did not list 26 cases. Even the police report withheld the lot code, while distributor reconciliation remained incomplete. Carla Boone confirmed the code had not been released outside the investigative team. Brenda's face lost color. She tried to explain that as nutrition director, she reviewed product series routinely. Owen asked why she knew the exact missing quantity before the distributor completed its analysis. No answer survived the question. The distributor records appeared on the screen behind her. Delivery dates, transfer dates, management approvals, all before the blackout. Then came the catering photograph. Cases bearing Jefferson Ridge labels stood behind employees wearing Sloan Family Events aprons. Carla displayed the search photographs from the warehouse and the text message ordering all 91K cases moved before count day. The parents began murmuring. Brenda gripped the lectern. For several seconds, she remained silent. Then the defense she had built from procedure, liability, and incomplete records collapsed into the original reason she had crossed the first line. She described children arriving at school hungry on Mondays. She described cafeteria employees throwing away sealed products because grant rules did not permit informal redistribution. She described parents who called her privately because they were ashamed to ask the school board for help. She said she had begun by moving surplus food to a church pantry. No one in the room doubted that part. Several parents had received those bags. The problem was everything that followed. Owen asked why newly purchased stock went to the catering business. Brenda said her brother reimbursed the district and used profits to support community events. The payments were a fraction of the product's value. The records showed no return of profit to the meal program. Evan did not deny the needs she described. He had seen hungry children too. He understood how rules could fail people. But he also understood the point at which disobedience became exploitation. "You used real families' names," he said. "You billed meals their children never received. I protected the funding. You protected the numbers. The weekend program would have disappeared. And when the food went to your brother," Brenda looked towards the audience, "that revenue supported other purchases." "No," Owen said. "The accounting does not show that." Brenda's voice cracked. "You think rules are clean? You think budgets care whether a child eats?" Evan looked at the 40 students in the front rows. "No, but when you blamed me, you were not protecting hungry children. You were protecting yourself." The words landed without shouting. Laura Wynn stood from the staff section. She admitted that she had ordered Evan to move the 2 cases to Grace Community Church. She also admitted that fear for her job caused her to give an uncertain statement when Brenda first questioned her. Laura apologized directly to Evan. Pastor Ellis confirmed the cases remained sealed. One student, Sophie, stood beside her mother and described the numbered bag Evan had prepared for her. She did not try to prove the financial case. She simply said he had checked her name twice, refused to give her an unverified snack, and waited until she finished eating before moving to the next task. Another student said Evan had thrown out a whole carton when the label did not match, even though Brenda told him the outside box was good enough. Their accounts did not solve the audit. They established the care with which the 40 meals had been prepared. The 40 meal log reconciled exactly with the products Evan opened. There was no unexplained food in his possession. The missing 91K inventory had left before the storm. Brenda's original intention did not erase what followed. By using real children to create ghost meals, she exposed their families to scrutiny. By moving new stock to her brother's business, she crossed from unauthorized charity into personal benefit. By pressuring Laura and accusing Evan, she attempted to purchase her own safety with another person's freedom. The district withdrew the criminal complaint the next morning. Carla closed the theft investigation against Evan. Brenda was suspended and referred for state and federal investigation involving false claims, misappropriation of program inventory, witness pressure, and falsification of records. Her brother's company entered a separate investigation. Laura received discipline for delaying her statement but remained at the school. The families whose children had been listed on ghost meals were formally notified that they were not considered responsible. The district's insurance reinstated Evan's coverage retroactively. His lost wages were restored, though the payment arrived weeks after the bills they were supposed to cover. The man across the street who had photographed the search approached Evan one morning and apologized. Evan accepted without pretending the picture had not traveled farther than the apology ever would. At school, the sign disappeared from Micah's locker. The student who made it never admitted responsibility. Micah no longer needed the confession. He went on the band trip after several parents quietly contributed to a general student travel fund. Evan did not learn who paid which portion, and that was how the parents wanted it. The school board offered Evan the cafeteria manager position. He declined at first. A title interested him less than changing the system that had made the crisis possible. He agreed instead to design emergency feeding procedures for every school in the district. The new plan required paper allergy backups, manual lot tracking, two-person access to sealed emergency stock, independent transfer receipts, and a formally approved weekend food program. No meal could be billed unless a real child received it. No product could leave the school without a named destination and 2 signatures. No emergency pantry could be sealed without an alternate access procedure while students remained in the building. The district also created an independent surplus review so edible food could be redirected legally before expiration. Community organizations applied through a public process. No director could decide alone where the products went or alter student records to support the transfer. Several weeks later, Evan and Micah stood inside the Jefferson Ridge pantry preparing the first legal weekend distribution. The shelves had been restocked. The broken chain was gone. Emergency access now required 2 keys held by separate staff members with written authority for immediate use during transportation shutdowns or extended power failures. Brown paper bags covered the center table. Each carried a date, destination, lot number, allergy notation, and 2 signatures. Micah wrote the final code on the last bag. "If the food is free," he asked, "why do we still count every bag?" Evan checked the number. Because free to the person receiving it doesn't mean no one is responsible. What if everyone knows it's going somewhere good? Then the truth should be easy to record. Micah held up the black marker. "You carry this everywhere. It works when the power doesn't. It also ruins your shirts." That part is true. Micah wrote the final number, 40. There was no ceremony. No banner carried Evan's name. No television crew waited beside the pantry door. Teachers loaded the bags into district vans while another staff member checked every line against the transfer sheet. The food left through the correct exit, under real names, in the amount the records promised. Evan remained beside the table until the final van pulled away. Micah asked whether he planned to accept the manager position eventually. Evan said he had not decided. For years, he had chosen smaller titles because smaller titles seemed to carry smaller consequences. The blackout had reminded him that responsibility did not disappear when a person stepped away from authority. Sometimes it merely moved into the hands of people less willing to answer for it. Micah placed the marker in his father's shirt pocket. "You should take the job." "Why?" "Because you're going to check everything anyway." Evan smiled for the first time that morning. "That is not a qualification." "It should be." They turned off the pantry light. Before closing the door, Evan checked the emergency release, the manual inventory clipboard, and the paper allergy folder mounted inside the frame. Every system had a backup. Every number had a witness. Every bag represented a real child. One meal can carry someone through a cold night. An honest record protects the meals that must come after it. When someone says the numbers do not matter, look carefully at who is hungry and who benefits when no one counts.